Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about launching Shopify apps. So you might be in the middle of developing an app, you might already have an app, you might be researching the potential for rolling out an app or multiple apps for your business. And today we're going to talk about the 5 different things that are important when you basically evaluate your rollout, or you basically figure out how you can scale your Shopify app or your multiple Shopify apps. So we're going to talk through number 1, the market potential of Shopify apps. Number 2, the marketing channels you can leverage to make your Shopify app or Shopify apps successful. Number 3, the product features that you can implement into Shopify, outside of Shopify, in the different aspects of Shopify or for your merchants. And number 4, the onboarding experience you can create for your Shopify merchants, essentially either through your own app, through all kind of other channels. And of course, lastly, the ins and outs and the pitfalls and how hard it actually is technically, and what you need to consider when building a Shopify app. So if we go into it, first of all, the market potential. Obviously, everybody is talking about Shopify. It at some point in time was the new kid on the block, but it's probably now the leading system, at least from a media and PR standpoint. Everybody is talking about it. It has over 1 million merchants connected, and it's growing, still growing. As you can see from their own site, they say they have merchants in 175 different countries, doing almost $500 billion in GMV. Which is obviously a lot. The merchants are, given the background of the company, majority located in North America, at least for the largest portion. Nonetheless, in almost every country in the world, you can see here again 175 countries, there are Shopify merchants, and they are a important factor in most countries. So you probably want to consider Shopify and Shopify apps one way or the other. Many companies only build shops on Shopify, thereby, however, losing a lot of opportunity. But nonetheless, Shopify is probably something that you should consider. Of course, because of the size of the company and the attraction from a lot of companies, you also have a lot of competition on here. So if you build apps, you need to make sure that you're special, that you make use of the best practices and stuff like that to basically to create your Shopify app. So that was point number 1. Point number 2 we're going to go into are the different marketing channels. And of course, one of the main important things here on Shopify is the Shopify App Store. A lot of merchants are using apps stores to basically find the apps possible. So that's something you should definitely consider. There are multiple ways to do that. I'll talk about that in the onboarding experience. You can also run, you can create different partnership programs. You can run ads on Shopify as a new channel here, which can also be very effective. There's a big community around Shopify, so you don't want to miss out on basically going out, partnering up with other platforms. There's a lot of platforms promoting Shopify apps. There's a lot of kind of audience sharing going on. There's a lot of things going on around the community, which you definitely want to take advantage of. And lastly, you also want to make sure now you have a Shopify app that you implement that properly in your sales team, in your marketing, in your own marketing, where you personalize your different channels. Well, there's a lot of possibilities for marketing with Shopify, given the state of the platform and the state of the community around it, basically. So that's point number 2, and that's something where you have a lot of opportunities, and it's really high potential for you to basically do that, essentially. The next step we're going to talk about, the next thing we're going to talk about is basically the product features and how you can now actually create a Shopify app. What can you do? What kind of data can you get access to? Where the data, so let me take a step back here. We're going to talk through on the product features what data is available, what can you do in terms of front-end integration in the storefront, and finally, what can you do in terms of basically back-end integration and admin of the store. And to take the last point first here, I'm currently in the back-end of a Shopify store. Given it's a cloud system and not an open source system like Magento and WooCommerce and these systems, you have way more limitations here. So there are quite a lot of limitations on what you can actually put in here. You can add some different embedded applications and stuff like that, which we recommend always that it's very similar to your actual own software application that you should have on the side to make sure that you create the ideal basically experience of your product for your merchants. They should be in your product. They can also manage some of the stuff in Shopify, but there are some limitations, as I mentioned. If we talk in terms of the front end integration, obviously there's a couple of places you want to sometimes integrate some features on the product page, which you see here, which is possible. It is, compared to, again, Magento WooCommerce, limited. You can integrate in the cart or in the checkout, which is also possible to a certain degree. It is also quite limited compared to some of the open source systems. Of course, way more possible than with the marketplaces like eBay and Amazon, where you can't do anything in the checkout or the cart or anywhere. And as you see here, the checkout, you can actually integrate some things. So if I continue here to payment, you can both integrate some shipping. You can integrate here on the right side. You need to consider, however, if you do that you limit the scope of the merchants that can use your system, right? Because there's some limitations on the plans for the merchants as to what they can actually do in their own checkout. So you need to have merchants on a certain plan to basically use different features. So if you have a checkout product feature, you will naturally limit the amount of merchants you can basically target, which is very important. And you need to make sure that it's compatible with the templates that the merchants are basically using, which is another limiting factor. The template factor is also limiting on all the open source systems, of course, but you don't have the same limitation in terms of the plan on here. So that's basically that's some of the product features. Last kind of point I wanted to mention here was the access to the data. Again, given it's a cloud platform, you have to handle everything through the API. You can't go in and basically add a bunch of different data on your own. They have a pretty structured API, so you can also get a lot of data, but there are limitations in certain directions and certain sections where you can't simply do what you want to do with your products. So you need to take a lot of things into your own application to make sure you have the maximum functionality. So that was point number 3. Going into point number 4. How to create an onboarding experience. What can I do with my onboarding experience? And here, Shopify is pretty flexible, and it allows you to create a very seamless onboarding experience if you go through the Shopify review to get onto the App Store. There are different ways to do this. You can create a custom app, which before was private apps. Some might still be running on private apps, but you can't get into that anymore. On the other hand, you basically will be able to create a app on the App Store, which you need to go through a Shopify approval process, which, depending on how you build your app and stuff, takes some time. We can support on that if you need that. But in the end, you can then decide whether you want to be on the App Store, you want to be an unlisted app. Being an unlisted app gives you some benefits in terms of creating a seamless onboarding experience, because you can place the button to onboard from anywhere in your own experience, whether it's in your marketing channels or in your application. And that means the merchant can simply click an app, and he can then basically go in and say, I want to basically use this particular store, which I want to integrate with, and then you have your app integrated from the merchant in basically one click, which can be very effective if you implement that probably in your product and especially in your sales team. So in that regard, you can create very nice onboarding experiences with Shopify, which you also can with many other systems, but there's also some limitations with some of the enterprise systems, some of the open source systems where the onboarding experience naturally are a little bit worse. The benefit, of course, in these systems is that the merchants are also typically more experienced. They know how to do it. So in the end, it ends up more or less the same. The last point I want to go through today is now actually how to develop an app, right? And Shopify, again, is a relatively new platform. It is a leading platform, and they have put a lot of effort into their API documentation, into being available. So you can relatively quickly get started, but if as soon as you dive a little bit deeper in, because of some of the limitations on the cloud system like this, you need to start doing some workarounds, which you're going to find might sometimes be a little bit difficult because the support is not really there to help with workarounds and special cases and stuff like that. So if you stay on normal cases, it's pretty straightforward. As soon as you go a little bit deeper, you might have some challenges in terms of actually getting your app rolled out. And that's also basically the last point I want to mention today. Of course, when you build an app, you want to make sure that that app can be basically ported to as many other platforms as possible. Once you're successful on Shopify, if you build a Shopify app as the first, you probably want to both scale up multiple amounts of apps. That is something we see, and you can see that in some of our other videos. That can be very effective. And secondly, you want to make sure that you can launch your apps across multiple different systems. So Magento, eBay, Amazon, all these different systems, to make sure you cater to as many merchants as possible. And if you do that, you need to take that in consideration when you build your first app. And that has some difficulties with Shopify. So you need to consider that. And of course, this is also where we come in as a company. We basically help providers scale their e-commerce app strategy across dozens or hundreds of different systems. So instead of going ahead and rolling this out on your own, learning everything from the marketing channels to the onboarding experience to the development to the product features and putting that all together in a scalable growth cycle, you can basically work with us and our team of specialists, which we have for every single step of the basically cycle of planning, executing, rolling out, marketing, and growing an app, an e-commerce app, whether it's on Shopify or any other system. And we take that into a scalable growth cycle to make sure that you can basically, from a technical standpoint, develop one app and launch dozens or hundreds of different apps across the e-commerce industry. And with that, I will say thanks for today and hope to see you in the next video. We're publishing videos on a regular basis on all the different e-commerce platforms out there about how to roll out apps, what to think about, what the marketing potential is, how to basically launch your apps across the e-commerce industry to get your brand and your product out there.